Now, I just got done telling you that connects with the two next passages. The next part is where you have a sinner who's a publican or a tax collector who was he betrayed the Jewish people because he kind of sold out for money and they were kind of a partying sort. And you have him coming and repenting before God because he's a sinner, and you have somebody who thinks they're righteous saying, oh, God, thank you, I'm not like this person. And Jesus said, you know what? This one went away justified, this one didn't. It's also a prophecy. If I'm right that these connect, not only are we going to be living in a time, according to Jesus, just before his return, when people will see God as being an unjust judge, and they'll need faith. We'll also be living in a time when you've got sort of two kinds of people. You got people that, out of their weakness, they're in sin, and you got other people who don't have enough love for those people to be God's representatives. Instead, they think they're self-righteous. So both are in trouble. And Kai, he also told this parable to some people who were trusting in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. 2 men went up into the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other was a tax collector. And the Pharisee stood and prayed to himself, God, I thank you that I'm not like this other people who are swindlers and unjust and adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all I get. But this tax collector, standing next to him, some distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, was beating his chest and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Jesus said, I tell you, this man went to his house justified, forgiven, rather than the other. Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. Now, I've just got done saying that this connects with the next one. And they were bringing even their babies to him so that he would touch them. And when the disciples saw it, they began to rebuke him. But Jesus called for them, saying, permit the children to come to me. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child will not enter into it. Now, what does this mean? Well, we find out more if we go to the parallel passage in Matthew. So let's quick turn there. Matthew chapter 19, verse 13 through 14. Then some children were brought to him, to Jesus, so that he might lay his hands on them and pray, and the disciples rebuked them. Now, why is that important? Because in those days, there was something called the Father's blessing. Anybody familiar with this? The child would be brought to the father, and the father would look at them face to face, eye to eye, look into the face, right? And the father would lay his hands on the child and speak a blessing over them. And so these parents who are coming with their children, they weren't snubbing the dads, but they believed the prophecy that the Messiah would be a father to Israel. Remember, it says, Isaiah said, unto us a child is born, his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. That he would be a father to Israel. There's many passages in the Old Testament. That he would be God with us. Emmanuel means God with us. That he would be God in human flesh. Jesus Christ was the Son of God and God the Son. And they thought, you know what? If he's a father to Israel, I can bring my children and receive the Father's blessing for them. And so the reason that the disciples were upset wasn't because the children were coming. Look, you can read all kinds of times when he healed children, raised them from the dead, brought children. You know, did you ever ask that question? Well, why are they upset on this occasion? Hadn't there been children all around? And why would Jesus be upset? I'll tell you why he's upset. Then come on, guys. Where have you been all this time? Haven't I been changing people's perception about God instead of being a God who's angry, being a father who loves you? Have you noticed that I'm telling parables so that I can speak to adults and children at the same time? Haven't you seen that? And they're thinking, but this is inappropriate. They're wanting you to give the Father's blessing. And then he says, not only are they right, but whoever doesn't come to God this way, like these children, he's not just saying come to God as a child. Now, he's saying that He's saying we have to have we have to have childlike faith. But what he's saying, hear me on this, unless we come to God in the way that these children came to receive the Father's face-to-face blessing, we don't enter into the kingdom. You know, in the Old Testament, there's a verse. Back when I was in college, there was a Puerto Rican pastor. His name was John Jimenez. He recently died. He got this burden on his heart that America should have revival. And so he got his connections going, and he gathered in Washington, D.C. It was called Washington for Jesus. Anybody remember Washington for Jesus in 1980? Okay. It was about 100,000 people came. And the prayer was, and the theme was 2 Corinthians 7:14. Some of you know this by heart. Shall we say it? If my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. And so this was the theme, and I'll never forget it. An African-American pastor named E.V. Hill, he got up and gave sort of the main, they had other speakers, but he got up and gave the main prayer. And he's a powerful preacher. He goes, save us, God. We're perishing, God. And all the people's on their faces and crying. And